Good evening, and welcome to the October 16th, 2013 Town Board meeting. And I'll officially call the meeting to order, and I'll ask that everyone please rise for the pledge. Thank you. I'll ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Cole. Here. LaFountain.
Here.
Metzler. Here. Moore.
Here.
Quinn.
Here. Okay, thank you. Busy night tonight. We have a number of topics on the agenda, including public hearing. Before we get started, I would like to first call on Councilwoman Linda Cole, and then also recognize, I think I see Bernadette Bunny Brickman, our librarian, and Mary Maley, former librarian, and ask that both of them please come forward.
So you're coming up. Okay, I have the pleasure of reading this proclamation to Mary Maley, who's the head of the Friends of the Public Library, and Bernadette Brickman, who is the director of the Penfield Public Library. Whereas the Friends of the Penfield Public Library raise money that enables our library to move from good to great, providing the resources for additional programming, much-needed equipment, support for children's summer reading, and special events throughout the year. And whereas the work of the Friends highlight on an ongoing basis the fact that our library is the cornerstone of the community, providing opportunities for all to engage in the joy of lifelong learning and connect with the thoughts and ideas of others from ages past to the present. Whereas the Friends understand the critical importance of well-funded libraries and advocate to ensure that our libraries get the resources it needs to provide a wide variety of services to all ages, including access to print and electronic materials, along with expert assistance in research, readers advisory, and children's services. Whereas the Friends' gift of their time, commitment into the library sets an example for all to how volunteerism leads to positive civic engagement and betterment of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that our Anthony LaFountain, Supervisor, proclaims October 20th to the 26th, 2013 as Friends of the Library Week in Penfield, Monroe County, New York, and urges everyone to join the Friends of the Library and thank them for all they do and make our library's community so much better. This is dated October 16th, signed by the Town Supervisor and the 4 Town Board members. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Do you have anything to say?
I do want to thank you again this year for this wonderful honor. The Friends do mean a lot, not only to the library, but to the town of Penfield, because they create that wonderful book sale that is the biggest community event, I think, in Penfield. There's hundreds and hundreds of people that come, and there's hundreds of volunteers, and there's hundreds of people that donate books, and then when they read them, then they come in and they buy them. And then when they're done reading them, they bring them back to the sale. So it's the most wonderful recycle event. And also this year, I want to say thank you to the town in particular for the support they gave the Friends this year in helping us get our own storage trailer. Maybe we could have done it ourselves. I know we could have. But the support from the town made all the difference in the world. And on behalf of all the Friends, I want to thank you for that.
I just want to
So
give
thank you very much.
another plug again. I always ask, I asked at a previous meeting, can you inform the folks here how much money was raised in the book sale this year?
The book sale made $27,000 this year to be used by the library.
$27,000.
It's a great thing.
It's just amazing every year.
It's just the best. The best thing for Penfield.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. So next week, spend some time at the library and thank our friends and thank our library staff. So thank you. Our next item briefly, I see Marie and Fran in the audience, and would like to call them up very quickly for a very important note this time of the year, and I'm sure it will be one of many that we'll hear from both of you.
Thank you. We'll be very brief with our comments this evening. We just want to give a couple brief updates of what has occurred over the summer. And do want to let you know that in July, we received weekly donations both from Wickham Farms and Penfield Community Gardens, and we're very appreciative for those. In August, wonderful project, Eagle Scout Dave Maurer headed up several crews actually and got the house painted, and we're very pleased so that it can continue looking good for the neighborhood. In September, PBA members Jeff Chapman and Paul Dwyer continued their shelving project so that we can have plenty of shelving in the basement to house all of our goods that end up being inventoried there. And then finally, I'd like to turn things over to Marie, who would like to speak very briefly about some future visions.
Thanks very much, and thanks for letting us sneak in here this evening. As I think you heard from Fran, the Penfield Ecumenical Food Shelf is really a community partnership, and as he's mentioning, all these different faces and parts of the community that make this all work, I think it's only right to mention the town and what they do. Tony, you always keep it in the forefront of your supervisor's column. Many of you like our Facebook page and share those posts with everyone, and you are all part of keeping it, again, as a great community resource. We'd also like to extend our thanks to Jim Kreckman for all he does as well. Looking ahead to the future, we will be exploring a partnership with FoodLink. We are the only food pantry in Monroe County that does not partner with them, so we will be looking to have some preliminary discussions about that. And then we will be back here in November to talk about the Penfield Food Shelf and the holiday programs coming up. So again, thank you, and thank you to the community and our wonderful volunteers. None of it would be possible without our volunteers, so thank you again.
Thank you, Fran. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to our public hearings, and I'd ask our clerk to read our first public hearing.
Okay, so public hearing number 1 to allow an apartment at 1865 Penfield Road in the Four Corners zoning district. This public hearing has been withdrawn by applicant. So moving on to our second public hearing to consider the establishment of Extension 56 to the Penfield Consolidated Sanitary Sewer District. The legal notice was published in the Penfield Post on September 26, 2013, posted on our town website and town clerk bulletin board. 184 postcards were mailed, and 3 homeowner associations were notified.
Very much, and I would ask Mr. Horwitz, is this properly before the board?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'd call on Mark DeFrancesco, part of our engineering department and sewer administration, if he would give us an update, please.
Okay. Thank you, Tony, board, and thanks to all the residents in this proposed sewer district extension to take time out of your evening to come and hear this public hearing and speak at it if you desire. First, I just want to go through a brief history of the project. I think it's important to show where we've been and where we are today. Through the years, the sewer department has fielded many calls from residents inquiring about sanitary sewers in this area. Most of the homes, as you know, are somewhere between 50 and 60 years old. Septic system expansion is a challenge because most of the lawn areas, as you well know, are occupied by physical impediments such as trees and pools and sheds, and also there's a topography issue. Most of the homes in the backyards drop off quite significantly. Also through the years, the health department has kept track of septic system repairs, which have reached approximately 50% of the homes in the area. In early 2011, we conducted a web-based resident survey, and the results of that were 75% of those that responded were in favor of the project. In mid-2011, the town board decided to postpone for a period of 1 year the project due to some previous obligations we had as part of the consolidated sewer district already. So we had to let those projects move ahead. In the fall of 2012, we held a public informational meeting, and many of you came and spoke. Also, in the fall of 2012, the board authorized MRB Group to prepare an engineering report. This provided a schematic layout of the sewer system. Many of you saw that at that time. It outlined some basic environmental considerations. It included a cost estimate and financial considerations. And then in early 2013, the board decided to circulate a formal petition on the question of sanitary sewers. Between February and June of 2013, almost all 175 properties in the district were contacted, and the level of support has reached 69%. The final petition has been filed with the town board, and this public hearing was called. So this hearing tonight is on the question and to seek public input on extending the sanitary sewer district boundaries to include the 175 plus or minus properties in this extension. Also the method of financing, the annual cost to a typical property, and any other matters that may be related to this project. As you probably are aware, the environmental aspect of any project of this magnitude is quite significant. This year, in August of this year, the town board authorized the preparation of an environmental assessment form. This is in compliance with New York State, the seeker law, and the purpose of the EAF is to identify potential environmental impacts of the project and also areas where further investigation may be necessary. The town staff and our consultants, and maybe I should back up, I have here Jim Pete from MRB Group. He is with the consulting firm that is helping us with this project. We have been in contact with Monroe County Health Department, Monroe County Department of Pure Waters, New York State DEC, and also the New York State Office of Historic Preservation. These discussions have led to identification of areas where further investigation is necessary. The town board has been designated as lead agency in the project, and we've, through these discussions with DEC and the Office of Historic Preservation, we've determined and learned that this project is within an area of archaeological sensitivity, and that is partly the reason that the town has contracted with an archaeological consultant. We have completed phase 1A of his research for archaeological significance in the area, and we will be undertaking phase 1B. Now, this is all required by New York State Historic Preservation Office and DEC. The phase 1B component is a subsurface investigation, where actually the archaeological consultant will be conducting shovel test pits along the center line of the sewer, and a shovel test pit consists of a 14-inch diameter hole. The sod is removed. They excavate down 12 to 14 inches. They sift the subsoil, looking for artifacts. And this is done approximately every 50 feet on the center line of the sewer. Once the soil has been sifted, it's put back in the hole and the sod is replaced. So it's virtually undetectable after it's done, but it is a requirement, and that is the phase 1B aspect of this. The town board has also adopted a negative declaration of environmental significance, which affirms that these protocols I just talked about, the shovel test pitting and any future evidence that's discovered through construction, that these protocols are followed. And it also identified that an environmental impact statement would not be required to be derived. So that's a brief overview of the environmental process that's taken so far. You've all seen this map here, and I'm going to just give you a preliminary idea of the way the sewers are running. Many of you have asked me through meetings we've had about center lines, and I'm sure you're very concerned about, which side of the street it's going to be on, and obviously impacts to your properties. We can start to answer some of those questions here tonight. So after this hearing is concluded and we're done asking questions and satisfied, I would invite you all to come down to the lower level of the town hall. We have a conference room down there, and Jim has brought preliminary preliminary design drawings that start to give us an idea where the sewer alignment is going and what disturbance can be expected. So that'll be after the hearing.
And those that either can't do that tonight or want to stay for the next item on the agenda can reach out to yourself and have that discussion on a one-on-one basis or a small group basis, either here or on site.
Always. Okay. My cards are on the back table here for
Mark,
those
if I could
interested.
just interrupt,
Yes, Paul.
there's nothing on our agenda or up on the screen that indicates the streets that this involves, just in the event there's someone who's listening or watching at home who may want to call in and participate, and they're wondering, where is this happening? Would you just outlay generally the boundaries of this?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's what I'm hoping I'll do right now. I'm going to start on the northern end of the project. This represents Old Westfall Drive, and this is Reginald Circle. All of these areas flow down to Woodhaven Drive. Let me pull this up a little bit. Here is the circle on Woodhaven, and the sewer flow exits both sides of the loop on Woodhaven and Parkview down here onto Parkview Drive. We then pass the private drive, Falcon Crest, here on the right. The sewer flow will come down Parkview to a pump station, which will be located at 222 Parkview. It is a vacant piece of property owned by the county, and we're working with the county right now to try and obtain either an easement or access to that site. So all of this effluent would be directed by gravity to the pump station. The pump station would then lift it up past the rise in Parkview Drive. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. And then it will then start to go gravity again at this point south. It'll pick up Parkington, heading south on Parkview. This is all gravity flow. And then it will come to the intersection of Browncroft, Old Browncroft at this point. Now we'll head over to the east. We've got White Hill Drive and White Village Drive, where the flow comes together. It comes around the corner on Old Browncroft, and it all meets up right here at this intersection in front of the daycare center. It will then flow down Old Browncroft, all gravity, down the right-of-way of the Old Browncroft Boulevard. It'll go under Arundecoit Creek here in front of Glendevere's, around the corner, and ties into the Monroe County Interceptor right around the driveway at Baker Commodities. So that, excuse me, that in general is how the sewer line is figured to run at this point. Again, we talked about there are 175 homes in the district, 3 or 4 vacant parcels in that neighborhood, 5 vacant parcels that aren't built on. One of them is the county. Actually, the county owns a number of parcels, I think, in this area. So again, after the hearing, if you want to see the preliminary design drawings, just follow your way out of the area, the conference room here, the auditorium, and then you'll make a left where you came in down that hall, and there are signs, lower level conference room on the doors. You can either take the elevator down or there's a stairway either side of that corridor. The cost of the project is estimated to be $2.44 million, $2,440,000. This includes, obviously, construction, engineering, legal and financial consultants, and a contingency fund. The method of financing would be a sale of bond anticipation notes and/or a serial bond to pay for the improvements. In Penfield, we can all be proud of our AA3 credit rating, AA2 credit rating, and this will result in comparatively lower financing costs to the district. So at this point, I just want to go through some PowerPoint slides real quick. This is a component that is required by the state law that we identify a cost to a typical residence. I'm going to draw a line right here. There are two categories. There's the Penfield Sewer District and its debt service and operating costs. And then there's Monroe County Pure Waters, their capital, which is same as debt service, very similar, and then treatment costs. So the Penfield debt service, which would be charged to all properties in the district once this district is formed, will be an annual cost of $79.56 per year. Sewer operating costs are $39.79, and that's based on the 2014 Sewer Department budget. One thing you want to note, and I'll stress this through this discussion, is that this is only the properties that are connected to the sewer system. So you do not receive this charge until you connect to the sewer system. And move down to the county category. Their capital charge is annually $27.39. Again, that's all properties within the sewer district and/or its extensions. And then the county's treatment costs total $1.29 for every 1,000 gallons of water you use on an annual basis. So for a home that uses 70,000 gallons, that's $90.30 a year. This would be summarized right here. So once the district is formed, the capital and the debt portion of those charges would be charged to your 2015 property tax bill. And that is the Penfield debt service, $79.56, and then the Monroe County capital of $27.39, for a total of $106.95 on your 2015 tax bill. So that's a charge that everyone will see once the sewer district is formed. Once you decide you want to connect to the sewer, that is when operating costs kick in. And again, the Penfield portion, $39.79 annually, and that Monroe County treatment based on 70,000 gallons of consumption, $90.30, for a total of $130.09. So if you want a ballpark estimate, all in, tied into the sewer, using it, about $236 a year annually. Again, these charges will appear on your annual property tax bill each January. Prior to your connecting to the sewer, you'll be required to pay a $500 sewer entrance fee. Half of that goes to Monroe County Pure Waters, and half of that stays in Penfield. And then it is the property owner's responsibility to hire a plumber to make the connection. Usually those costs are between $3,000 and $4,000. This is a projected capital charges for the Penfield Consolidated Sewer District, and it's a telling graph, and it says, if you just hold the questions 1 minute, it shows that the spike from where we are today, 2013 right here, at $68 to $79, which is including the Parkview White Village Drive borrowing. But then through the years, over the next 5 and even 10 years, you see how this rate drops off dramatically. And that is because we are paying off our old debt at a quicker and quicker rate, and we're not adding any more beyond this project right now. So this is a very good sign of health for the consolidated sewer district, and it continues to drop through the years. So then, so I'm going to walk you through a schedule. Again, this is anticipated. It can change pretty significantly, but this is how we see this unfolding. The rest of this fall, we'll continue to work on the environmental matters, the historic and cultural resources. We have to obtain a wetland permit from DEC, and LWRP is a local waterfront revitalization program, which the town has a plan that deals with the bay. This project is just inside that, so we have to demonstrate consistency, which should be pretty easy to do. We'll continue to develop construction plans and specifications, and then prepare necessary easement documents for construction of the sewer. Then in early 2014, we'll complete the permitting process with DEC, Health Department, and Pure Waters. We're going to hold another public information meeting, and this meeting will be pretty much just to review the advanced construction drawings, coordinate lateral locations with folks. Your lateral is your connection to the sewer. It can be placed anywhere left or right along your frontage, wherever is most advantageous for you in the future to make that connection. So we'll be determining those as we get closer to construction. And then we're starting to meet with residents on necessary easements. March through April, we hope to be bidding the project, putting out for public bid. It'll be a one construction contract spanning 2 construction seasons. So in May, the town board, hopefully we have it to that point, the town board can award a bid to a single contractor. And then June through November of 2014, the contractor will mobilize and start construction. The construction is likely to happen in multiple locations within the project. So we're not working just in one spot. We'll be in 2 or maybe 3 locations. Some driveways will be cut, normally out of service for 2 to 3 hours, not days. And in all cases, driveways are put back in service at the end of each day. You can expect that traffic patterns would be modified and delays would be likely. Road closures would be unlikely without significant planning and coordination of emergency services and residents. You can expect to see materials stockpiled, pipe, stone, manholes, staged in various locations of the project. At the end of season 1, which usually late November, early December, our expectation would be to have most of the project completed. All areas where work has been done, completed, seeded, driveways paved, and roads paved. Spoil and debris removed, and material stockpiles consolidated for the winter season. And then in 2015, it would start up again, weather dependent, completion of the remaining work items, the final lawn restoration and driveway restorations, and then landscaping. Okay. So, with that, I would entertain, or the town board can entertain any questions or comments you might have.
Before we get in there and we do that, I'll first ask the board any specific questions that we have. I mean, we've had numerous conversations at work sessions about this, but any additional comments based on anything you heard from Mark tonight that we'd like to get on the table? Okay. With that, Amy, do we have anyone that has signed up? And if you didn't sign up, the next phase is we'll get to those that did not sign up that want to speak on this matter. So we have...
Not for the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll take an order as hands go up. Calvin, I saw your name, or excuse me, your hand go up first, and then Dr. Lovelace in the back would be number 2. So Calvin, if you'd come forward to the mic, identify yourself, and ask your question, if you will.
It's a really easy question. Where's the mic? Oh, this one. Calvin Freeler, 15 Old Westfall Drive. The question I had was a real easy one. Do we have to fill our septic tanks with stone when they're put out of service?
Yes, that is a Monroe County.
Mark, if you just would, for the,
And
you know,
what-
so
and
people can hear
Did you
you.
include that in the cost?
Yes, that $3,000 to $4,000 estimate does include the plumber contractor pumping out the tank and then filling it with crushed stone
That's required by the Health Department?
by the Monroe County Health Department. Right.
Great, thank you. Doctor, good evening. Thank you, Calvin.
Vern Lovelace, 19 Old Westfall. When the project was done on Creek Street, I had the opportunity to talk to quite a few people who live in that area, and they were very upset that gravel, dirt, all types of debris was dumped on their yards. Trucks and other types of apparatus were parked on their yards, and they found it very inconvenient and there wasn't any way that they could deal with these issues. Is this the same thing that's going to happen to us, where they're going to treat our yards with disrespect by the contractors?
I would have to say no. Creek Street, I don't want to go back to that because we're talking about this project, but real quick, the contractor on Creek Street went bankrupt halfway through the project, which was terrible for the residents and us as well. So there was a long delay, and areas that were left unattended were left for a longer period. So that was a unique case. That's never happened to us in the past on a sewer project, and we don't expect it to happen again. Normally, the contractors that we hire for contracts of this size are very reputable and solid and responsive, and we'll have a team of people out there, inspectors and MRB group, construction manager, administrators to make sure it doesn't happen.
One other question. It was brought to my attention that those of us who have irrigating systems to water our lawns or other types of water use facilities that don't go through the septic or sewer systems could have a secondary meter put on the house that would allocate water to the house use, which would go pure waters, and the other meter would measure the water put in swimming pools and or lawn irrigating services. Is this correct?
Yes, exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up. As you know, as I've explained, Pure Water's charges based on water consumption, and they expect that whatever goes through the meter on the way into the house is going to come out through the sewer. And with an irrigation system, that's not the case. So separating the water service or the irrigation service with a meter is really the only way to demonstrate to Pure Waters that what you're using is not entirely sewer use. So that's really the only way to do that.
So Mark, as part of the construction process, as you're identifying the route and some of these types of specialty items that are in place, pools or irrigation systems or what have you, who works with a homeowner to make sure that there is that separate metering so that they don't get charged for those things that they shouldn't be charged for?
I would be happy to work with you to give you the contacts you need at either the Water Authority or Pure Waters, but that is a separate entity from us. So without your telling us and working through that process, it would go undetected. So I'm sure everyone would rather not have that happen. So if it pertains to you, then we'll get that on the table, and I'll give you the contacts you need to make that happen.
As we get down the path, we start looking at closer to finalized plans. That's the time to identify that and make that appropriate contact.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And one last thing you just brought to my attention. When the contractor calls 811, that's the general stakeout number where RG&E, Water Authority, Town of Penfield is notified to stake out their facilities. You won't get that notice. So when you start to see flags appear in the neighborhood and you have a dog fence or an irrigation system, it's your obligation as a property owner to make the contractor aware of that. If he does happen to break something, obviously they'll repair it, but we'd rather not see that if we can avoid it. So just for food for thought.
Mark, just real quickly, kind of following up on Mr. Lovelace's comment, Dr. Lovelace's comment. It's been my experience in the past on projects like this that the construction company always has like a site supervisor there that would be a point of contact for a resident who may have some type of a concern or issue. And then also the engineering company would have like a project manager on site in a construction trailer or some type of facility there to also work with residents. So was that correct, that in a project like this, there would be those type of individuals that residents could work with directly regarding any issues with their property, or they could go and have a phone number and a name of somebody to call to say, hey, I've got the fence in my yard, I just want to make you guys aware of this?
Yeah. Yes. The liaison from the residents to the construction company would be through the town inspector or the town engineering department, and you'll be well aware of those numbers as we get further into this. And then we would have usually weekly meetings when the construction is going full blast with the contractor and to address issues that may come up during that time. So that's kind of the function of the inspector, is to handle those calls, those complaints, and or concerns, and work with the contractor to resolve them.
I would just request, along the same lines, in that we don't have everybody necessarily here, let's make sure that every resident within this district has ahead of time the contact people, who they are, and also what information they, as you mentioned, they should be obligated to provide to those people. I mean, as Chair of Public Works, you've taught me more about sewers than I ever thought I would know. But as a homeowner, I don't know if I necessarily would know what I would need to tell a contractor, or I don't know what information would be useful, or what my obligations were. So maybe two parts, or even one sheet, an information sheet for residents that says, here's the contact people, and if you fall into one of these categories, you need to let us know, or if you have certain impediments or things, and I would highly suggest that.
Yeah, that would probably be very useful for the residents to do that. And also, we plan to add a section to the website where you can ask questions or just follow the progress of the project through the.
Because then I think the manager on site could even have a notebook that has copies of everybody's sheets that say,
Yeah.
I have, a fence, I have irrigation system, and, by address, it's all right there.
Yep.
I'm not an engineer,
good
but I
point.
would just
No, that's a great point.
suggest that.
Will do.
Other questions or comments about the sewer project program? Calvin, please. Just before, I'd like to make sure we get one-time speakers first before I hit second-time speakers. So let me just, one more check. Is there any first-time speakers on the sewer project itself? Okay, Calvin, if you would, please.
I wondered what the cost, Kelvin Freeler, 15 Old Westfall Drive. What is the financing plan? What will the loan cost? Do you know that? Or is that to be covered yet? I'm not sure.
No, I'm done with my presentation, but we've estimated the loan.
Mark, if you
cost.
just step up to the, thank you, Mark.
Our
So everybody can hear.
Our financial consultant and MRB have both estimated and checked with our comptroller the borrowing cost to be 4%.
Okay.
Of a bond anticipation note or a serial bond.
For how many years?
Be a 20-year note.
20-year note?
Yep.
Okay, so.
And that would be a note to the consolidated sewer district.
So roughly 3.5 million maybe after 20 years is the total cost?
I don't know.
Okay. All right, so I'll make my comment then.
Okay.
Okay, all right, we'll get the number.
So while he's looking for that, Calvin, why don't you ask your question, and then we can follow up. We can follow up with the the
Okay.
information on that.
Well, hold on.
I have the cost.
Jim, if you please.
Jim Pete, MRB Group.
So that people who are watching at home can't hear you unless you're up at the microphone.
Jim Pete, MRB Group. I have the cost for a household within the district would be about $10.20 per year. That includes all of the debt service costs associated with this extension only. So $10.20 per year times 175 parcels is the annual cost.
No, I wanted the cost for the entire project.
Entire project, sure.
Yep.
Yeah, so that'd be 4%.
financing cost?
Yeah, I haven't got that. That I haven't got. Sorry about
I
that.
could take a shot at
Yeah.
it with my calculator. But I'm guessing it's, if it's 4%, let's say, and it's 2.44 million, I'm thinking it's around at least 3.5 million. So if there's 175 properties, I don't know what that works out to. I think about $18,000 roughly per property for the project over 20 years. So I think it is a very interesting and big engineering project. But the big question I have is, given that cost, is there some overriding reason to spend that much money on it? And as an alternative, I would suggest just doing White Village first. But don't focus on that too much. The big question is, given 18 grand plus 3 to 4 grand, that's 22 grand roughly to connect a property. Is it really worth it? And I'd just like to know what the justification is to spend that much money. Thank you.
And so you identified 18,000 for the 175 properties, but this is spread out over the district, the sewer district and the extensions. And Mark, you might want to just comment on that a little
Right,
bit.
right.
So it's not an $18,000 charge to each individual homeowner.
It's not borne by
project.
170
No,
properties
right,
only.
no. We have 17,000 plus or minus parcels or units within the consolidated sewer district. That cost is distributed amongst all of those sewer users, or sewer parcels. The justification is that without municipal assistance to get a project like this done, it would not happen. There's no agency out there that would take on a regional municipal sewer project and have it constructed. So without the town's assistance and this type of planning and this type of effort, septic systems would go on forever with the impediments that I mentioned earlier and the failure rates and so on and the age of the homes. That is the motivation.
While you're coming up to respond, a decision was made many years ago, probably more than a dozen years ago, and Mark could probably identify that even closer than that, but if I recall, now more than a dozen years ago, a decision was made that we would have the consolidated district, and the idea there is that as older systems need to be upgraded, so systems that have been in place for 30 or 40 years, and the homeowners in that particular area may not be able to cover the cost of that or afford the cost of that. Not to mention the fact that state audit and control limits the amount that can be charged for that. And so as we, as Penfield, looked at doing this and trying to make sure that we were covering those areas that had previous septic systems, maybe septic systems that had failed or a high failure rate, the intent was to identify those areas and to try to provide sewers. And so that was a plan that we've been working on, as I say, for more than a dozen years to try to identify that. Park View and White Village is our last major area within the town that has not been sewered. That doesn't mean that we don't have some onesie-twosies here and there. And Mark and his team continually look for ways to try to get that tied into the sewers, either by small grinder pumps and some private force mains or some extensions and things like that. And so over the years, Mark has really looked to try to identify, ways to get sewers to as many of our current residents as possible. So that's by way of a little background in history.
Okay. So I agree that the project is probably well-intentioned. The point was that that's very expensive, and it's basically, is it not cheaper just for people to simply upgrade their septic systems than to do a large public works program. That was the point that I made. I know that it's distributed over other taxpayers, but the real question is it economical to do such a project? That was what I was getting at. Is this a good use of dollars, or should it be borne by the individual homeowner? $18,000 is a lot of money. It's a complicated project. I understand that. I don't think $2.44 million is too much, given what you talked about. It's a huge project. I just want to be sure the tax dollars are properly used. That's the point I'm making. I know that we're not bearing all of it. That thank you to the rest of Penfield who's going to help pay for this. That was my point. I agree that, it's well-intentioned. So then I said, well, is there some overriding reason that would justify that cost? So is there an environmental concern? Is there additional pollution into the bay or into the swamp below? Those are all mitigating factors, and I haven't heard anything to say that that is the case. So that's where I'm coming from.
So we have this hearing is to hear from folks like you as to what your positions are, but we also certainly take into account the process that came before us tonight in terms of surveying and, dealing with just shy of 70% of the people, of the residents in those neighborhoods being interested in this project when being given all the information, being able to make an informed decision as to whether they were in favor of it or not.
I appreciate that, but they're not bearing all the costs. That was the point, the secondary point. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Lovelace?
Given a lifetime of 30 to 40 years for the average septic system, what do you feel is going to be the life of the sewer system before the remediation of those pipes is going to be necessary that are going to be in front of our homes? Are we going to be talking about 30 or 40 years?
From an auditing standpoint, the financial usefulness of a sewer system is 60 or 70 years. The realities of it is that with the new technologies and PVC pipe, it's much longer. I'm not here to tell you it's going to be 100 years or 120 years, but I can guarantee you that none of us will be around when this project needs to be renovated. Okay.
Other questions on the sewer piece? Okay. All right, I saw Mr. Dwyer getting up. I didn't know if he wanted to speak with us or just wave to us. Hi, Paul, how are you? All right. And any other questions or comments about this? Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask the board, any other questions, board, from your end for Mark or for Jim Pete? And then I would ask Mark, Jim, any additional input that we have not heard that you believe is pertinent to this project and to this public hearing? Okay. So the next steps are for those that would like to go down and look at their property up close and personal. They can do that. It's going to be down in the basement. Jim and Mark are there. For those that would like to stay for the discussion of our next topic, Baker's Commodities Stakeholders Information Meeting, you can certainly do that and grab one of Mark's cards on the table and follow up with Mark. Give him a call any day of the week, Monday through Friday, and make an appointment, and he'd be more than happy to come out and visit with you personally right on site. Bring out the maps, take a look at things as we go through. The next time that the board will talk about this particular topic will be at our work session, which is the 23rd. Right. And that's right here in this room. And we'll take into account any and all comments that we've received either tonight, in the past, in writing, and what have you. So I'll declare this public hearing officially closed. I'll give about 30 seconds for those folks that would like to go with Mark before we get started on our next topic, and that'll be the Baker's Commodity Stakeholders Meeting.
We'll be down there for a while.
Okay. So what Jim is has just informed me is that they're going to be down there for a while, so you may be able to catch the next part of the meeting and then go down and catch the sewer piece as well. Okay.
Nice job.
And then, Mark, I would just maybe ask that on the way out, if we just kick that. Oh, you're heading downstairs, so we'll give you a second or two, and then we'll go. We'll leave the door open. So, okay. So as we head into our agenda, the next part of the agenda is Baker Commodities stakeholders update, and let me give a little overview as to why we have taken on this forum. There was a period of time where the stakeholders were getting together, and that included DEC, the town, Baker Commodities, and some number of residents from this area, from the Parkview area, Woodhaven, Browncroft, Reginald Circle, and the like. And we got to a point that I elected to stop that meeting in that particular format. I did that for a couple of reasons. Reason number one was that I thought we were spending more time massaging and wordsmithing summary notes rather than working on some of the other items. And I thought that we weren't necessarily getting full representation from the neighborhood, and wanted to make sure that we had a forum that we would hold a couple of times a year where residents could come in and we could have a conversation about the Baker Commodities and the stakeholders associated with that. We could talk about any odor complaints that had been received. We can talk about different programs that were put in place, equipment that was updated or upgraded, and then we can talk about a number of other items, which I'm sure we'll get into as we get into this session. So that purpose was that in the fall timeframe, and what we'll attempt to do in the future is not have multiple meetings, but because the sewer project affected a lot of people, and the Baker Commodity stakeholders affects a lot of people, we thought that having the two together might be the best approach this evening. I think we'll make sure that we separate that, in the future. And then what will happen is that sometime in the spring we'll hold another one of these sessions as well, and that'll give folks an opportunity to again update the stakeholders, share information, ask any questions. Answers to the questions may not necessarily be readily this evening, but we'll capture what those questions are, and then from there we'll get that fed back out. This evening, I note that we have representatives from Baker Commodity, Bill Schmieder, and Neil Osterhaus, and we also have a representative from, I believe, Ashland Chemicals here, and I do not see DC, either Tom Marriott or Gary here this evening. But with that, so that's a little bit of an overview as to why we've moved to this particular format. I wanted to just share a little bit of information, and so I've got a couple of spreadsheets. One that was provided to me by Bob Reed, who has captured a number of the odor complaints, and if my math is correct, Bob has captured 31, And if I've missed on that, Bob, you can update or confirm that with me. And then on the one that I keep from the town, I had captured 30. So we're off by 1 or 2 odor complaints that we'll look to rectify as we go through. As these odor complaints have come in, one of the things that we have attempted to do is to identify, what the cause of that odor complaint might be. In some cases, it has been an easy identification, a check valve, a low water alarm that may have come in. If we had an electrical trip, there are, in some cases, an opportunity to trace back what may have triggered or may have impacted where an odor complaint has come from. And then in some cases, we have not been able to necessarily trace back. So it's not saying that there wasn't odors. It was saying that at the time that the odor was reported, all indications were equipment was operating properly, and the plant was all of the oxidizers and those things were functioning properly, or the plant was shut down. So we do have some of those odor complaints that are, where did they come from? Was it something that a blow off from some piece of equipment? Was it something in the yard? Was it surrounding properties? I mean, so there was no easy pinpoint to be able to do that. One of the things that we had talked about up until our April meetings was that Baker Commodity was looking to make some major improvements. One of the major improvements that we had talked a lot about is the media, for lack of better terminology, the chemical that was being used within those oxidizers. And there was a trial that was done in 2012 and picked back up in 2013. And then a decision was made by Baker Commodity. They informed us at our meetings that they were going to be making the switch over, which, if memory serves me, was in the mid-July timeframe. One of the discussion points that we had is that from the time that they started up until about the mid-August timeframe, when we even had some very hot weather, things seemed to be working out pretty well. And then we had a series of odor complaints that came in, and I know Ashland was in on the site several times to go through and work with the equipment, their equipment, Baker's equipment, and the Baker's Commodities personnel to try to identify where some of those issues or some of those concerns were. So that's kind of a little bit of history. I'm not saying that's the total history by any means. I'm just giving kind of a snapshot in time from where we ended our stakeholder meetings in April, and to bring us up to date here. At this point, I might call on Bill Schmieder, who is the plant operational manager there. I know that again he's been working with Ashland regarding the update of the media use for the scrubber, and give Bill an opportunity just to kind of update us where we are right now, and any input on that, Bill. And then certainly we'll then open it up for board and audience to have some broader dialogue, Q's and A's, and some things like that. So, Bill, if you would give us kind of a little snapshot with where you are with your current update of the system, specifically around chlorine dioxide.
Again, thank you for having me here, Supervisor LaFountain and the town board and the neighbors. My name is Bill Schmieder, and I work for Baker Commodities. We do have, again, Neil Osterhout is with us. He's our plant manager. I'm the division general manager. We have Sean Fryover from Ashland, and he represents Ashland as far as the generation system, the installation, and the operational side of things. Back in 2010, we did conduct a pilot program for the chlorine dioxide generator. We again brought him back in 2011, or 2011 we started, I'm sorry. In 2012, we had another pilot program, and then we had made that decision to upgrade the system, and in 2013, we did put that system in. June 23rd, or July 23rd rather, we did make that cutover, that switch over. We had several meetings, quite a few meetings actually, with the town and with the neighbors, and we discussed what we're doing and how we were going to do it, and you know, that we asked for the cooperation and support of everyone so that we could identify any problems that we may have with the startup of the system. And initially, I think we kind of thought that there might be a couple of two to three week window before we really got it dialed in. It was a little bit longer than that. We did have some highs and lows, some peaks and valleys. We have 3 air scrubbers that we have operational down there, and they're all independently operating different departments with different odors and different odor loads. And so we have each one has to be calibrated, and it was more of a daunting task than what we had anticipated. But we think we're there. We're still not done. We're still evaluating, monitoring, tweaking it daily. But the last couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a little more, we've had maybe a couple of complaints, odors, complaints that have come in. You know, again, we as Tony had said, we review that, we look at that, you know, what time of the day, what were we doing, what equipment was operating, and try to identify that, find a solution, and correct the problem. Again, we think the system is about where we want it. I'm not sure that we're at 100% max on that, but day by day, you know, we look at it. Sean spends a lot of time at our facility helping us to monitor and calibrate that. Neil is pretty much dedicated most of his day to that, and we think we're there, but we still have some work to do. Any questions or?
Not for me at this time. I don't know if the board, any specific questions on, I'm sure there'll be different aspects of operations that we'll chat about, but I don't have anything at this point as it relates to the new media that you're using or the scrubbers, at least at this point. So, okay. While Bill is at the podium, Bill, any since our last get together in April, any other major projects that you have undertaken other than what I would call normal routine maintenance? So, you know, routine maintenance could include, you know, updating of any valves or check valves, replacement of some piping and things like that. But any major project work that has been going on since the April, other than the chlorine system?
No, the chlorine dioxide generating system is pretty much the only major project with the odor abatement system at this point. We're pretty much dedicated the rest of the remainder of the year to monitoring that program and to continue to adjust that to reach that maximum efficiency that we're looking for. But we don't have anything going on for the remainder of 2013 and 2014 with our capital expenditure budget. We do not have any projects pertaining to that program. We do, as you had mentioned earlier, we do have ongoing daily routine maintenance, repairs, adjustments, valves, flows that are ongoing. But as far as any major projects for this year and next year, we do not. You're welcome.
I'd like to open it up to the board or to the audience. And I think, Amy, I think you had a couple of slips of folks that had signed up to speak. So if you would take those, please.
Marked as public participation, but possibly Bob Reed?
Bob? Want us to hold that slip for public participation as well?
No, I thought I was just signing up for this part of the
No, not a problem. I just want to make sure we don't overlook you at public
thanks.
participation.
Well, thank you. Bob Reed, 275 Parkview Drive. And it's been quite a year for us for odors from the Baker Commodities rendering plant. We'll have to compare notes, Tony, on your numbers, but as of mid-July, I'd logged 23 complaints. On 8/22, we hit quite a spike. Excuse me, on 8/14, we began quite a spike. We had 26 more complaints between 8/14 and 9/11. And right now we're running, I think we have just about 60 logged complaints. Okay.
I'm just going by the sheet that I got from you as I took a look at it. Now, I think where we may have some differences, and until we have an opportunity to compare this, if there were 3 complaints in a day, I counted that as an odor event for that day that had 3 complaints. And I'm thinking that you counted it as 3 separate odor complaints.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And our experience.
So I think that's where the that's where the differences are.
Our experience is that for every reported complaint, there are 3 to 5 more people who have experienced it, but don't report it. They go off to work and forget about it, and we just don't hear about it. And so it's a pretty good number. Since we've been recording complaints, we've now reached over 200 complaints since 2006. And that's significant, I think, because the previous 8 years, from 1998 to 2005, we had 0 complaints. Our whole complaint reporting system fell apart and disappeared because there was nothing to complain about. And believe me, we were ready to complain. 1996 was a terrible, terrible year for us. So when 1997 came around, we heard some promises from Baker Commodities. They're going to fix the problems. We didn't believe it, but they fixed it. And we had 8 years of almost forgetting that they were down there. So we know that really, really good odor abatement is possible. They're capable of doing it. But since 2005, they haven't been doing it, or they've been doing it in a very irregular fashion. And we don't know why. But this has been the worst year since 2005. 60 complaints is quite a few. I'd like to put a human face on this and tell you about my neighbor 2 doors down, and her complaint wasn't recorded because she couldn't remember the day. And it was 2 weeks later, I'd been away on vacation, I came back, and she said, Bob, there was that day in late August when I didn't want to take my daughter out in the stroller because the stench was so bad. And then the complaint that we did record, and you'll find that on the list there, a neighbor on Old Browncroft who had to move her evening dinner party off of the deck and inside because the smell was so objectionable. And I believe you'll find that, I hope you'll find that notation on the sheet, but definitely it was part of what I sent to you in an email.
Yep, I've got it captured on mine, Bob, and I think I do recall seeing it on yours.
Some of the words that other neighbors have used this summer, especially since August on: horrible, noxious, sickening, disgusting. Now, I'm happy to say it's not that way all the time. We're not blanketed by bad odors all day, any day, okay? But to have it for an hour or 45 minutes in the morning, to have it for an hour in the evening is pretty unpleasant. I recognize the great strides that Baker Commodities has made over the years. I've lived there in the neighborhood since 1986. they've come a long way, and we benefit from that. But as I've said, we know they can do better than they've been doing for the last 8 years. Okay. The DEC, I don't think that the DEC has found anything to object to about the way they're running the plant. But that concerns me, because I don't think they have the manpower, having been cut 25% in the last 7 or 8 years, or the money to properly monitor them when the odors are being created. I'm also very troubled by the DEC's inability to discover massive emissions of benzene in Tonawanda that were making people mortally ill over a period of years. And you can Google Tonawanda Coke, C-O-K-E, but not the soft drink, the industrial fuel. Every DEC visit gave Tonawanda Coke a clean bill of health. The neighbors had to learn to take air samples and have them tested independently, submit them to the EPA, and then everything hit the fan. And it's still working its way through the court system. So I'm glad we have the DEC. We're fortunate to have it. They do an important job. I'm not sure they're capable of monitoring this problem, which isn't as severe, is more subtle and intermittent. So over the years, we've had this cycle of problems, good times and bad times. They keep coming back. We feel, I think many of us feel, like the canaries in the coal mine, or guinea pigs, that Baker doesn't really know how good a job it's doing until we complain, until we suffer. And for something to happen, somebody's got to decide that we're suffering enough. And frequently we feel that the town doesn't think we're suffering enough to do anything. At one of our meetings, Tony, you'll recall, actually you were out of the room, but we discussed it quite a bit at the next meeting. Jim Costello said that 40 complaints in a year and a half wasn't of great significance to the town. And he emphasized that by talking about Genesee Conservation League and the number of complaints they get about the gunfire in that area. That was very dispiriting, because we think 40 complaints in a year and a half are a lot of complaints. And it was a sign that we thought the town really wasn't taking the problem seriously. So we have come up with some proposals, as you know, Tony, over the course of a year and a half of attending mostly monthly meetings. And I'll just quickly go through them. One would be, let's find out the real nature of the problem, the real extent of the problem. Canvass all the adjoining neighborhoods to find the true scope of the problem, including on the Brighton side. Engage an expert for long-term, independent evaluation of what Baker Commodities does. Heavy financial sanctions for Baker for poor performance or for putting profit ahead of odor control, with clear trigger points for action. And I'd be glad to email you these. Don't want to give you writer's cramp. Some cities have done that. It does seem that that there are never any consequences for Baker except to try to fix the problem. I hate to sound punitive, but there should be some punishment when they fail in a big way. And I'm not talking about a whiff here or there, but significant problems. Testing of stack emissions to know what's coming out and as an early warning of odor control failure. City of Fresno, California has tried this, among other things. I'm not sure how successful it's been out there, but the search for technology to monitor in real time what they're emitting into the atmosphere so that they might have a better idea of the problem that they're creating before it becomes a problem. Frequently, I think since they do a lot of their heavy processing at night, we don't know there's a problem or that they've had a problem until a place has been shut down in the morning and they're closed for the day. The air has gathered in the valley, things warm up, the air rises, and we get the smell. If they had better testing, better monitoring equipment on their stack emissions, they might be able to know before the problem gets to the point that we get a snootful in the morning. Exploration of better methods of odor control, such as biofiltration. They use it in Canada. Don't ask me to explain it, but it's called biofiltration. And finally, we've kind of felt that there's an uneven playing field, as you know, Tony. Going through the old papers, I found reference to the fact that that when the town sued Baker Commodities in the 1980s, it dropped the suit in 1989. And Don Mack mentioned that there was a secret agreement between the town, he was the supervisor at the time, between the town and Baker Commodities. And then he withdrew that comment and said there was no secret agreement. But we did find a written reference to a confidentiality agreement between the town of Penfield and Baker Commodities, and that it required the lawyer, the town's outside counsel, Mr. Dorr of Harris Beach, to return some of the documents that the town had acquired, I think, during the subpoena process. We'd like to know what was in that agreement. We think that we don't know what to think, but the town has an agreement with the plant that we don't know about. Now, you mentioned that Mr. Horwitz had an update on that, and I wonder if he could help us with that.
I certainly did mention that Mr. Horwitz spent a considerable amount of time, going through all of the boxes of materials that we have in our vault area. So I know he did spend multiple hours scanning through a lot of documents that date back to the late 70s, early 80s, at least the early 80s.
That I ever was able to see.
You were, Mr. Horwitz, the town attorney at the time, I believe.
Absolutely.
And the letter from Mr. Dorr of Harris Beach is addressed to you.
No.
It's not?
No. I don't know if you have it.
I don't have it right with me, but I thought
I don't know
it
what
was-
letter you're referring to. We
Tony
sent
has
a
a
lot of
copy
letters
of it.
back and forth, but
Yeah.
no, there's no secret agreement.
But Tony, you have a copy of the letter that I gave you, right?
I do.
Is it not addressed to Mr. Horwitz?
I can take a 30-second break, and I can go get that letter because I don't have it with me, Bob. But
Yeah.
I can certainly
Sure.
grab that letter. But
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I know what that who that was
Right.
addressed.
But it was the town's outside counsel, Mr. Dorr,
Correct.
right, writing to the town of Penfield and mentioning a confidentiality agreement and the return of documents.
There
So-
was an agreement with the court system, a protective order in discovery, where Baker Commodities turned over what I assumed to be, because I was not part of the persons designated to have access to what is called confidential, and was labeled confidential by the courts. And so whatever proprietary documentation, if it was, or trade secrets, if it was, because I have no idea what was in those materials, all I know was the courts directed the return of those materials after the lawsuit, which was not dropped, it was settled and resolved.
Discontinued.
And it was resolved in a way that Baker's was committed to do substantial improvements, which I know that you are aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is no secret operational agreement between the town of Penfield and Baker Commodities. Everything has been transparent.
Well, it certainly doesn't seem such from my reading of that letter. And in fact, Mr. Dorr, the town's outside counsel, expresses his disapproval of it. He regrets that the town has entered this agreement, but he's complying with it, and that's what he says in the letter, and returning some of the documents.
Just to explain, Mr. Dorr and I have a relationship. He has a sense of humor. The case was quite a case in litigation, and at the end of it, he had to search through what I had to search through, 7 or 8 boxes to cull out that which the court required to be returned to Baker Commodities. That's what he was discouraged about.
Sounded like that he was very unhappy about the confidentiality agreement itself, but was complying with it. And I wish I had the copy of it right here. Perhaps I'll bring it to another meeting and we could continue the discussion. But I would say, and thank you, Mr. Horwitz, and I'm sorry you had to go through all of that paper. But we think there's more that the town can do to to be sure that these problems don't keep coming back, and that people like me, who really, in retirement, I suppose I have the time, but this is not what I enjoy doing, okay? It's not what I enjoy doing. But on behalf of my neighbors and myself, we'd like to have clean air to breathe. We know we can have clean air to breathe because they did it for 8 years. And they're not doing it now. The last few days or week or so has been much better than the earlier period, no question. But typically we see the complaints drop off when the weather gets cooler and when we get more wind to mix whatever comes out of the plant with other air. But I've outlined these points. I can put them in an email to you. You've heard them all before from me, Tony.
Yeah.
And I think at one of our meetings you said the town will not take any action on any of the points that we talked about.
I said at this time, the town would not. Yes,
Right.
after discussion with the board, I said that we would not.
And that's pretty discouraging because the state of New York does give towns broad powers, special provisions in state law to regulate noxious but necessary plants like Baker Commodities. And I'm 100% approve of what they do. It's an important function to recycle these materials. They should not be landfilled. And I think it's, you know, in the Middle Ages, they had something called alchemy, you know, where they tried to turn lead into gold, you know. I think Baker's doing that. It's turning something that's essentially, by definition, worthless and would be landfilled into something that has economic value, commercial value, and I'm in favor. But I don't think the Parkview neighbors, you know, should have to suffer for that. And we have the sense that we shouldn't have to suffer because they have done it better than they've done it. So I'm calling for more town action, which I've always called for, and we've never gotten. Thank you very much.
Hopefully that vacation didn't create that limp.
No, it's a late bequest from my grandfather.
Understand. All right, understand. I think you have another slip, Amy, if you would, please. And again, not sure if it's public participation or
I believe it's for the future public participation. Is that correct, Murphy?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So we've gone through the sheets that we had. Is there anyone
Jeff,
else in the audience? Jeff, and then Dr. Lovelace, and then anyone else and then Calvin Freeler. So we'll go in that order.
Hi, I'm Jeff Burns. I live at 39 Scarborough Park. Just have a couple of quick questions, and I don't know if Bill can answer these or if I have to address them to the board. How that works here.
Well, you address them to the board, and then
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Well, one question is on the scale of odor mitigation technology that's available. What level is used at Baker now? I say if you were to take a scale of I don't know 0 to 10 or something, with the whatever the highest technology. I don't know what that is. I read something about biodegradable nanoparticles or something that can be used. But on a scale of technology, where are we in terms of what's used in Penfield?
Bill, if you would, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Bill.
That's a very difficult question to give an answer to. I don't really know. What I do know is that, and every rendering plan is different. Every raw material is different, and there's different odors that are emitted. What I do know with our rendering plant, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say we've got to be between 9 and 10. But I can't speak for other rendering plants.
Okay. I have a couple of
Sure,
other questions you might want
sure.
to stay up here. So I understand that there are like 110 volatile compounds that are identified among rendering odors, and that there are 26 that are the most notable. Are there any of these in particular that are particularly problematic at Baker, that as far as people in Parkview are noticing? Is there a particular area that's hard to hit, or is it not predictable as to which of those might be the problem?
Well, I don't have an answer for that. We basically deal with our sense of smell as far as what the neighbors are receiving from that. I couldn't tell you. You know, our goal is to be contain the odors and treat the odors and keep them from emitting into the atmosphere, into the neighborhood.
Okay.
And certainly, Jeff, that might be a discussion you want to have from a DEC standpoint, as
Right.
well as
Yeah.
the agency that is tasked with monitoring that plant. That might
Yeah.
be a good conversation with a Tom Marriott.
But is there anything that's being done on an objective level to measure what is coming from there as opposed to subjective? I mean, the sense of smell certainly is something that you get reports and all, but it seems there are objective ways of measuring precisely which of the most notable volatile compounds are. Is there anything that's been done in that regard, or that could be done?
I'm not gonna say yes or no that I'm aware of. I know that again, Tom Marriott might be a good person for us to sit down with.
Okay. And then in terms of plants of this sort with rendering, and as Bob Breed had said, I also believe that this is an extremely valuable function that Baker Commodities does there, that it's a form of recycling that's really important, and on several different levels, I think it's really important to do something like that. But in terms of release of odors, is there in the industry an acceptable level, or, I mean, I know you want to have it so that there's never anything, I mean, that would be your ultimate goal or whatever, but is there an acceptable level that if you said, well, if there were 3 days a year, that would be an acceptable level, or is there a goal that the industry aspires toward, or that Baker Commodities itself aspires to in this particular site?
Well, again, our goal is to have zero odors. We do have equipment and we do have employees, and at times some of the equipment does break down and we have to make those repairs, but obviously our goal daily is to have zero odors. But I don't believe there's an industry standard other than what that is. I don't think anybody wants any of them.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. I think, Doctor, you were next, and then Calvin.
Vern Lovelace, 19 Old Westfall Drive. Do you care if I put something here on the board with your...
Not at all, sir. Is there a handheld mic? If you're going to speak and want to be away from the mic, there might be a handheld mic underneath there.
For the board, this is a little diagram of what we've been complaining about for 2 years.
Just push that mute button, just hold it, and the light will come on. There you go.
We, in the Parkview, Old Westfall, and those areas are up in this area, very small section that are represented by the stakeholders group that have been meeting with the town representative, Baker Commodities, for over the last 2 years. This is approximately 10 degrees of arc of a circle. And this is where all of these complaints have been coming from. The way the odors get from Baker Commodity at the center of the circle to where we live is by the direction of the wind. If the wind doesn't blow in our direction, we don't get any odor. But maybe somebody else is during that time. Maybe the wind is from the west, and the people over here are getting the odor, but they haven't got a stakeholders group, haven't been around to know that they can file complaints. Maybe they were here back in the 60s when everybody knew that you couldn't complain about Stappenbecks because nothing was going to get done. Maybe this whole 350 degrees of the circle share our small amount of complaints. 23 complaints times 36 is a far greater number that we should be looking at, because I do not for 1 second think that we up here are the only ones perceiving these malodors and that have complaints. I don't believe there's anybody down here that's sitting out in their backyard ready to sit down for a dinner, waiting for the odor to arrive to make their evening that much better. I think you've got a problem and you have to address it. We have been trying to address it for the last 2 years with this stakeholder group, and we are a very offended part of the community. We've met with Mr. LaFountain and these very fine gentlemen, and we've all had a lot to say, and we've all tried to make headway. We've wanted to control and eliminate the malodors, but I often felt that the meetings were very adversarial. We went around in circles. It was a he said, she said, and I totally agree with what Tony said. We would waste more time discussing what was said last meeting that didn't get into the notes or was misinterpreted, and it was non-productive. Part of the reason it was non-productive is we didn't have good minutes. I brought this up at one of the first meetings I attended, that if you're going to do this, you have to have good reference minutes. That wasn't, my opinion wasn't followed, so consequently, we had sketchy, non-informational minutes that you could argue till hell froze over about. We, as a group, wanted the town of Penfield to force Baker Commodities to stop the malodors that were dispersed into our neighborhoods and changed our daily lives. I feel we've been around in circles over and over and have gotten no place. We have been awaiting new technology this summer, but as this new technology has been introduced, we've had even more complaints. The neighborhood and communities around Bakers have not been consulted for their input or to even inform them that we're looking for their input. I asked 2 years ago to have a representative from Brighton brought over, and Mr. Tierney came over, but Mr. Tierney hadn't had complaints. But if you solicit people who reside in Brighton, they didn't know that they should be complaining to Mr. Tierney. So I think that we have missed the boat in trying to find out who is really getting these odors. We need to find out from everybody around here within a 2-mile radius of Bakers. Do you get these odors? How often do you get these odors? And we would like you to use the Town of Penfield phone number to issue your complaints. I'm not talking about calling Bill Schmieder down there and issuing a complaint to him, because he's going to come up into your neighborhood and say, I don't smell the odor. That's happened over and over and over. Bill never smells the same odors that we smell. My questions: do we as a town have a goal for the control of odors that are being emitted? Not if they're being emitted, but are being emitted by Baker Commodities. Do you as a board share our concerns and want to represent us and our needs relative to the offensive odors distributed by Baker Commodities? Do you as a board have an interest to solicit complaints from neighboring communities such as Brighton and other small areas which are in Penfield? And I've always asked the question, why don't we start at the top of technology to control these odors? Go with our best deal, and then if that works, fantastic. And then maybe trim it down a little bit and see where the odors start getting re-emitted. We're trying to cut off the legs of the odors from the bottom, and we're never finding out that we can eliminate it and control it. We're letting the wrong people monitor this. 2 years ago, one of my first discussions was, why aren't we taking odor samples off these stacks and submitting them for spectrographic analysis? Find out what are the elemental bases in those effluent gases that are giving us these malodors. It's always been my contention that we can get data. Our noses are very variable from one household to the next, but we have equipment that we can get effluent gases and measure data, whether it's a streaming amount of data or intermittent acquisition of that data. Baker's has not met the goals that I would have expected of a good neighbor since 2005. Thank you.
Just, you can probably just leave that on and. I can do that. Okay, great, thank you. Calvin Freeler?
Calvin Freeler, 15 Old Westfall Drive. The only comment that I had is just about chemistry experiments to try and make the odors go down. I don't know if you're putting chlorine in or not doing that at all, but I've had some days where I smelled some chemical odor that, I couldn't tell you what it was, but my preference is that that not be the approach if that is being done. And to the board, do we have any sort of controls over what technologies? We can't be doing experiments where people have to breathe it. That's my point. And so that is one thing I'd like to see addressed. I had no problem with the thermal units that you were using before. I think that worked great, that technology. Personally, I don't mind a little organic odor, but I don't want to smell chlorine and other things that could potentially be bad for me. That's all I had to say. Thank you. And thanks for your efforts.
Oh. Other speakers? Board, other questions or comments at this point? Sure. Jeff?
Just wanted to ask, Sean, you're from Ashland Chemical, right? Do you know what the chemicals that are involved in the volatile chemicals, the compounds that are involved in the that provide most of the odors? No. What? I'm sorry. No. Okay. But you're using.
So let's just make sure. Make sure I understand the question. I apologize.
Sure.
You ask about the odor of, or I'm sorry, from a compound of the chemicals or from the rendering material.
Well, what I understand is that in rendering that there are 110 volatile compounds that contribute to
we chatted about that when you were
odors.
up last, and you got that whittled down to 26.
That there are 26 that are the most notable that are that are the most offensive and I guess difficult to eliminate. So I just wanted to understand if you know that. I mean, you guys know that as well, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So we don't. I think there's a problem if we don't know what the compounds are that are presenting this problem, and that we should find out what they are.
I think what we should do, Jeff, is to get Tom Marriott and to have a sit-down discussion with Tom Marriott.
Uh-huh.
And I'd be more than happy to coordinate that.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Tom Marriott's from the Department of Environmental Conservation? Yes. Okay.
Okay, because it seems as though that there are specific chemicals that are the most offensive, and it's very subjective to go after what you smell, and much more scientific to find out what those compounds are and to attack those specifically, and also that they can be measured and we can find out what is going on where, and they could be measured in multiple locations, and it could be very specific as to what is happening and then what needs to be done. Thanks.
Other questions or comments at this point? Yes, Bob, please.
Bob Reed, 275 Parkview Drive. It didn't happen tonight, but I noticed that you begin, I think, many board meetings by talking about some active civic engagement in the previous 2-week cycle where each board member has been. Do you still do that? Yeah, very frequently, yeah. I would really appreciate it if you would make an effort to make it a goal to talk to some of the people who've been inconvenienced by the odor. I think over the years, we've made some strong requests and recommendations to you, but in the end, you don't come back to us with anything. Inaction on this issue. It seems that you're always content to take what Baker Commodities offers, in conjunction with the DEC. The DEC doesn't seem to see a problem, but we do experience a problem. I think, I'm saying this one more time, you need to be proactive. You need to come up with a plan. You need to try to help us and not just kick it down the road. We'll probably have a decent winter, but at some point this is going to come up again unless we have some better long-term solution. Thank you.
Bob? Other questions, comments? Yeah, Tim Murphy. Excuse me.
Mr. Supervisor, Town Board, Tim Murphy, 48 Corral Drive. I'll listen to the conversation. I have two specific questions. Is there any money in the 2014 budget for independent environmental monitoring?
No.
No, okay. And second, maybe something we need to investigate, but to find out, I heard references and I've read about the special powers granted to towns if they have rendering facilities. Can we find out if we can get from Baker Commodities some more information about the volume, scope of their processing? I mean, possibly an element in all of this is they've ramped up and maybe they've exceeded some kind of threshold that we don't know about yet. So again, seeing if we can go back in time and say you've did X amount of tons 10 years ago and you've done Y amount of this year might be an element in all of this. So, thank you.
Other questions or comments? I've asked the board any additional questions, comments. I'll ask Baker any additional comments at this point. Okay. Then seeing none, we'll at this portion of the agenda for the informational meeting. Again, I'll give just a 30-second for those that would like to leave. Can do so, and then we'll continue on with the regular agenda in about 30 seconds. Thank you to Baker, Ashland. Thank you to the neighbors. Thank you to the board and feedback. Okay, we'll continue on with the regular agenda. Our next part of our agenda is communications and announcements, and after that will be public participation. There's an opportunity if you're here live, you can call in at 340-8771 or log on at penfield.org, and we'll start with Amy Steckloff, our clerk, please.
Supervisor, just a reminder, general election day will be Tuesday, November 5th. Voting hours are from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please note the polling sites do remain the same, so where you were last time you voted, that's the same place, from last year. And please exercise your right to vote.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. Penfield Recreation, in conjunction with the Penfield American Legion Bremen Post, will hold a Veterans Resource Day on Thursday, November 7th at 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. at the Penfield Community Center on 1985 Baird Road. This event is free and is an opportunity for veterans to talk with representatives from local and state veteran organizations and agencies. Free coffee and donuts will be served, and welcome kickoff will begin at 10:15 a.m. as our guest representatives give a brief description of their area of expertise and then offer participants time to speak with them directly at their designated tables. On hand that day will be Monroe County Veterans Service Agency, Veterans Outreach Center, Honor Flight, Fairport VFW, Penfield American Legion, and the Veterans Association. Many universal questions can be answered at this event, such as medical benefits, burial benefits, town tax benefits, county discount cards, New York State benefits, obtaining service ribbons and medals. There will also be an opportunity to learn how to find and connect with other men and women who served with you using internet search sites created specifically for this purpose. A special half-hour presentation, The Serendipity of War, Stories from World War II by Ken Andrews, will be presented at 11 a.m. The Legacy at Willow Pond will provide free lunch for veterans and their spouses at 11:30 a.m. The luncheon will be followed by a special presentation from Honor Flight at 12:30 p.m. Registration for lunch is required and can be made by calling Penfield Recreation at 340-8664, and please register by November 4th. Again, this is a partnership between Penfield Recreation and the Penfield American Legion Bremen Post, and it should be a wonderful event for the men and women who have served in our military. Thank you.
Penfield's players will be presenting their fall comedy Born Yesterday by Garson Kanan. Born Yesterday was originally produced on Broadway in 1946, then adapted into a very successful film in 1950 starring Judy Holliday, William Holden, and Broderick Crawford. Performances will be held Fridays, November 1st, 8th, and 15th, and Saturdays, November 2nd, 9th, 16th at 8 p.m. at the Penfield Community Center. Tickets are $15 at the door and $12 in advance at penfieldplayers.org. I also wanted to recap for folks a very big day in our town was Saturday, October 5th. We had a lot of recycling events going on sponsored by the town of Penfield. On that day, the town of Penfield partnered once again with our great Penfield Rotary and our community bikes. Linda Cole was there all day accepting bikes. Actually, it was only a 4-hour event, and in 4 hours, 446 bikes were donated to our community bikes, an organization which rehabs bikes, takes old bikes, unwanted bikes, and preps them for folks in the city who otherwise would not be able to afford to have their own bike. I was there donating 2 little boy bikes with my not-so-little boy, who readily gave them up, thankfully. And I recalled when the library group was up here, it was kind of interesting because I purchased those 2 little boy bikes at the Shepherd Home garage sale a few years ago, and now is recycling them again. So I don't know where they originally came from, but they'll be put to good use. So thank you, Linda, very much for your hard work on that with the Rotary. Also that day, we had a recycling event at the Highway Garage on Jackson Road, and we do have some tallies of numbers, which I think are quite impressive for the town of Penfield. Our residents coming together to keep items out of the landfill and recycle as much as possible. The brush pile, we continue to accept brush, increased about 2% in current pile size. I'm not sure how they measure that, but we'll go with that. Also, the Echo Green Park document destruction, 450 pounds of cardboard and 14,289 pounds of paper were destroyed. And what else? The computer recycling and electronics. In one day, the town of Penfield residents, 29,000 pounds of electronics were recycled. And finally, the metal that went to ALPCO, the metal recycling brought in 160 pounds of stainless steel and aluminum and 9,780 pounds of standard metal. So that's quite a tally for one day in the town of Penfield recycling event. So kudos to our residents for going through their garages and such and pulling out what they could to recycle. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you. One item, the town offices will be closed on Monday, November 11th, in recognition of Veterans Day. So that's Monday, the 11th. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Please come on Friday, October 18th for an evening of family fun
for the Halloween party at the Penfield Community Center at 1985 Baird Road. The event will include games, trick-or-treats, hay rides, crafts, music, and more. If you'd like to participate in the pizza dinner, it will be $5 per person. That will include a pizza, a salad, and a drink. Also, there'll be a ghost walk occurring at Oakwood Cemetery beginning at 6 p.m., and I believe Councilwoman Linda Cole is going to be leading that ghost walk there. Tickets will be $5 for that ghost walk. Events will take place from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and if you'd like to participate in the pizza dinner and the ghost walk, please purchase the tickets in advance or call the Recreation Department at 340-8655, option 6, just so they know who will be attending. Also, final announcement, free guided hike at Webster Park on Saturday, November 9th. Please join the Penfield Trails Committee and Friends of the Webster Trails to explore Lake Plain habitat. The hike will be from 10 a.m. to noon, and look for the hike signs off Holt Road. Participants are asked to call in advance to the Recreation Department at 340-8655, just so they know who will be attending the hike. You can also go to penfieldrec.org if you'd like additional information. Thank you.
I have two announcements. Recreation's annual preschool Halloween party with the Penfield seniors will be held on Tuesday, October 29th at 1 p.m. in the Penfield Community Center. There will be a costume parade, trick-or-treating, along with the vintage games. This is a free event, but parents will need to register their preschoolers at the Recreation Office or online at penfieldrec.org. And my other announcement is my next community chat will be Tuesday, November 19th, 5:30 to 7 in the new book area in the library.
Mr. Horowitz, anything this evening?
Nothing further tonight,
Alrighty,
Mr.
sir.
Supervisor.
Very good, thank you. We'll move on to public participation. I know we have at least one sheet that has come in, maybe more. If I'd ask the clerk if she'd please read those.
Tim Murphy.
Hi, Tim.
Good evening again, Town Board. Tim Murphy, 48 Corral Drive. I guess I have an announcement, or at least a reminder. There's 3 Meet the Candidates events coming up, one next Tuesday, another one the following Sunday, the 27th, and then the third and final one, the Penfield High School students are going to do it on the 28th. I assume that'll all make the website in the near future. I submitted 4 questions regarding the 2014 budget, and I'd like to get to them briefly in a second. But I wanted to tell you about last night. I attended 2 different meetings. The first one was at the Penfield Firehouse, the fire district. And I guess it reminded me why I always wanted to be a firefighter. The people there were great, and they're so dedicated, it's unbelievable. But I was the only one there. They did their budget presentation and answered all my questions, and I think we're very grateful that somebody at least paid attention. Their $1.6 million budget is pretty substantial. And one of the questions I asked them was, why wasn't it included in the round of the preliminary budget for the town? Because it's about 10%, pretty big number. And I guess I assume, or they assume, there was some kind of procedural administrative breakdown. Because they did submit it on the 29th of August.
And it was put on the website.
Okay.
It was delivered to the website, and it also was immediately put on the bulletin board in our hall.
So when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I think there was a comment that it hadn't been made available yet. So again, somewhere there was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was mine, but again, I went through it with them. Again, a very dedicated crew, and just hope that the town board, especially, that you folks would see it to maybe represent the town there in future meetings.
Well, I think, and I'll speak for myself, that I try to get to as many of those as I possibly can. It's been, I think, since 2006 that they've had what the state has required them to have a public hearing. Up until then, there was no requirement under state law to do that. And coincidentally, I was asked to facilitate a fire district, ambulance district opportunity for shared services and looking for ways to help reduce cost. And I'm doing this as a favor to a good former colleague on the legislature and former public safety director for Monroe County, looking for ways as to how we can do things better, more efficient, and what have you. I did indicate to at least a couple of commissioners that I would not be there, not because I was not interested, but certainly I know in having the ability to work with Bob Beeden and see the information for the materials that come in for Northeast, West Webster, and Penfield, that we have the opportunity to have a little bit more upfront information than maybe most folks do. But that's a common thread, a common theme, because what I heard last night is from 2 fire districts that historically no one shows up for those hearings or those meetings or the rollout of the budget, and essentially no one shows up for votes for the district and when they're electing commissioners. And typically, other than some onesie-twosie folks, obviously those that are participating within the fire district themselves or part of the fire district or fire protection district, depending upon which one you are. That historically has been an issue that I know is sensitive to the commissioners, and one that is that ongoing effort of no matter what you do to try to advertise, solicit, et cetera, getting folks there. And in a lot of cases, different people I've spoken to have said, they do a great job. They provide a great service to the town. A lot of them we know, a lot of them we've grown up with, and what have you. And, and I'm not making excuses as to why they don't show up for that or show up for the vote, but it's an area they seem to be very pleased with as far as overall services, but definitely an area to work on.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The second meeting was at Penfield High School, the capital project program, and Councilman Moore was there, at least part of the meeting, and I thought it was exceptionally well done. Supervisor Grimm did a great job, and all his colleagues, it really added to the conversation. But we all know it kind of goes to that dynamic that there's the vocal few and the silent many. And one of the points I wanted to make, and just come back to you folks, is they announced for the first time last night that February 13th might be the date they'd put it to vote. And I wasn't compelled to stand up and say anything until the end, but it wasn't said, and I wanted to remind Supervisor Grimm that might not be the best time to have that kind of vote. As we know, and I've talked about, apathy is a big issue. But to try to maximize the potential turnout of voters, it might be best to either pull it forward or push it back, because we all know between the weather and the folks that leave for warmer climate, we'd like to give them an opportunity to vote. So I wanted to add that to the conversation because I thought it was important, because you've heard comments about that in the past, and again, hopefully the town board, you folks also recognize that. So I'll leave it at that. And Mr. Supervisor, I sent you an email last week with just 4 follow-up questions regarding the budget. I mean, I'm a numbers guy, but I work in the private sector. I don't work in the public sector, and I wanted to get a few other folks to put eyes on the budget and just give some constructive feedback and questions. So you had them in front of you, and I hope you're at least somewhat prepared for a brief answer to go through the 4.
I'll do my best.
You always do.
Do my best.
So the first one was with regard to just how the staffing in the town is presented in both the presentation and the budget itself. In corporate America, one of the things I know is you're always trying to defend your full-time equivalents and where you are and where you're going to be, and more importantly, how much do they cost you, what's their burden rate, et cetera. But we don't see that so much in the town's budget. And again, looking for kind of constructive input here, I mean, do you see yourselves going forward to be able to break it down? I mean, I know like the highway department is the largest, or DPW is the largest cost center, if you will, in the town. But I don't know what the breakdown is. You don't know what the head count is. I'm sure you folks do, but the town constituents don't know. So I guess I'll just formulate that into a question. Is there a way that you would see in the future that the town board and the controller, would be able to share that with us.
Certainly that there's no, we have our salary charts that we adopt every January at our organizational meeting, so we have that. And then, within that, within those particular grades, there are different positions that are identified, and we can go in and on that sheet identify the numbers of FTEs that are associated with those particular grades. And we try to, some of those grades will show 0 or no FTEs, only because what might have happened is that we had the position once before. Maybe the person retired or changed jobs and the position was not filled. And one of the things that I've done since being in a supervisor is to take a look at those sheets. And if we don't have those titles, we try to take some of those titles out so they're not necessarily misleading. But having FTEs opposite those particular categories in grade 1, 2, 3, et cetera, and then listing the equivalent FTEs is certainly something that can be done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Again, there are some folks like me that look at those numbers and, we derive meaning from them.
Right.
And you can also see, if you look back in time, where we, as opposed to where we want to go.
Okay.
So thank you for that. The second one is, and I'm very close to this because it's the time of year in corporate America where we're crazy about doing capital planning for next year, which always seems like a futile exercise because it always changes. But it is a good exercise. And one of the things, again, just an observation about the town budgeting process is that we do have big capital projects. You were mentioning about the ones that you break out over the year. We're retiring some debt next year. We've got the opportunity to do the sewers, District 56. But projecting those projects, over the next 5 years, I know that's something that we're always challenged to do, is try to look over a horizon and say, okay, where are you going to spend your money? So again, kind of like the same conversation about, your staffing, your workforce, big projects, seeing them come down the pipeline and being able to look out and say, holy cow, we're going to do this in 2 years. Like the fire department folks were telling me that the firehouse on Qualchville Road is up for refurbishing, and it's in their capital plan, but I'm like, where is it? It's 2 years out. It isn't shown anywhere in the presentation, and just using that as an example, it would be good exercise for all of us to go through and say, okay, what needs to get done, and where does it fall in terms of a planning horizon.
So we certainly can do that, and we can add that to one of our slides as part of the presentation, because we do have that. We have a matrix that is set up, that was set up many, many years ago with a combination of former DPW and parks and facilities. Now that it's all under one, we've kind of pulled it all under one. But under that, you'll see under the facilities side that covers all the facilities. So, for example, we have listed the community center, and we got identified the different times the parts of the roof were put on, and when the projected replacement may need to be. So we do that in the highway grounds and park side. We have a listing of all of our equipment, and some equipment gets changed out sooner than others. For instance, one of the large snowplows we may keep on the road for 12 to 15 years. That's typically what we do. And if you take a look at the matrix, we'll identify when that's going to be replaced in that 12 to 15 year. Now, like corporate America, we do the same type of thing. Bob and I have a little negotiation session with the department heads because they'll want to come in and say, okay, I'd like to do this piece of the roof, this piece of the roof, and this piece of equipment, this piece of equipment, and we'll say, you know what, we can't handle that much capital in 2014, for instance, and we'll ask them to reprioritize. And every once in a while, we bump up where we have a couple of pieces of equipment that might come due, and I'll ask the question, what piece of equipment, if you had to pick one, which piece of equipment and why? And they'll identify that. Could be number of hours on it, it could be number of miles, it could be, in a case of a building, it could be the fact We've patched the roof 6 times, and it's time to fix it. We can't push that piece. So we do have that. That's a simple add of a slide here and add of a slide as part of our budget process that we have. And then we also have a range and what I'll call an ROM of what the cost might be, because again, we could identify the roof needs to be replaced in 2018. I'm trying to assign numbers in 2014, and I've got to allow for some inflation there. So we'll identify some of those as ROMs. But we do have that, and that's an easy piece to just add to our presentation and add to our information.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Again, I've paid attention the last few years to the numbers, and I do appreciate the fiscal responsibility, and I do see the planning in it, but it'd be great to give some visibility to it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, the next one is a little bit more nebulous, and it's based on some input from some folks that have more experience than I do with it, but we had a lively conversation. In particular, the assessor's office, we look at it, looks like $238,000 worth of salary, if my math was correct.
Okay.
And, that's pretty significant, and I don't know the breakdown, and I'm guessing you folks don't know the breakdown either at this point. You do? Okay.
Well, we know.
We have it in a sheet.
Yeah, I mean, we have it in a, right. We have it in
If
a.
anybody wants to come in and take a look at it, I'd be glad to show them.
So we'll let the record reflect, because Bob is violating one of my requirements of coming to the podium. So there's Bob Beeden, our town controller. And so the question as it relates to a specific department, we do have that broken down, and Bob does have that material that is available for that. But I think there's a broader question that you have on it, though.
I do, Mr. Supervisor, and again, I'm getting input from some folks that are more knowledgeable than I am, but it's my understanding that New York State has a program today that kind of incents towns to look at finding ways to do the shared services that you mentioned earlier. Has the town looked at that, especially with the assessor's office, other towns, adjoining towns?
Certainly there has been, what I'll say is this, Tim. The easy answer is yes. The bigger, broader question or answer to that question goes like this, is that as you have smaller communities, you have a lot less residential, you have a lot less commercial, you have a lot less industrial. Typically you will find, where I was originally from up in the Adirondacks, you'll find an assessor that might take care of 2, 3, or 4 types of townships. And the reason for that is that they're full-time, and the amount of parcels that they're dealing with tends to be fairly small for each township. You put them together to make up that full-time position, and then you spread those costs. As you get into first-class towns and communities such as Penfield, and you're dealing with close to 14,000 parcels, you go to Webster, where I'm not going to have this exactly right, and Ron Nesbitt will, has probably got a pain in his side. He doesn't know why, but I think it's something in the neighborhood of 16 to 16.5 number of parcels that they have. To have one assessor be able to manage that is very difficult, even if you have somewhat of a broader staff. Now, we have had some conversations. We have provided some assistance, I know, back and forth to different communities when an assessor has left, retired, passed away, or what have you. Communities will try to help one another to bridge that gap. But as we've had some recent conversations, that becomes a little bit more difficult in the larger towns overall. Not impossible. I think it's something that we continue to look at. As Bob Beeden will say on some regular basis, I'll go in and I'll ask him a question, and he'll give me the answer. In 3 weeks or 3 months later, I'll go in and I'm asking him the question. He'll scratch his head and he'll say, "Didn't you ask me that question?" And I'll say, "I did 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago." I want to make sure that that answer is still the same, because that's how, from a continuous improvement standpoint, as we both know, that's how we get better. That's how we improve as we go forth. So the department heads sides get a little frustrated with me asking those same questions, and I'll get sometimes, and I have to be careful how I say this, but I'll get sometimes, the same look I'll get from my daughters. Really, Dad? Give me a break, will you? And I'll say, okay, guys, and I'll kind of slough that off, and I'll ask the question again to say, are we getting our best bang for our buck? So, I mean, I see that as my responsibility given to me as a position, but more importantly from this board, that they want me asking those types of questions, every day, every week, every month, and because, unfortunately, what is continuing to come down at us isn't necessarily pretty, and how we deal with it, we have to be even more creative than we ever have been today. So, ongoing effort. But yes, I think that's something that continues to get asked, because you know what, one of these days that answer might be different than what it is today.
Good answer, Mr. Supervisor.
Yeah.
And yes, keep asking the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Last question. This one's kind of near and dear to my heart, and it's not as substantive as the other ones. But, I did the bicycle master plan a number of years ago. And, I've heard a lot of issues about transportation, and we know about childhood obesity. And trying to think of ways that maybe we could somehow, find things to do things some differently. And sidewalks in particular is one thing that it'd be easy to laugh about, but I've seen it in other communities, Schaumburg, Illinois, Burlington, Vermont. We put it in the bicycle master plan. The Genesee Transportation Council thought it was innovative. They even wrote down, we thought that it was a great idea. I had photographs for it, et cetera. There was a time when the town of Penfield, and I don't know how many years ago, that used to think of it as managed taxes and sidewalks was kind of the big thing. Probably remember that.
No.
Okay. So there's $50K in the budget for next year. And I went to the meeting with Mark Valentine, I think it was 2 years ago, when he did the prioritization. And I think I was the only one there. And, kind of brought to his attention that, might be a cool thing to do, especially to encourage the behavior, enable the behavior, especially around like Scribner Road School, Atlantic Avenue, where you have real estate there, to widen the sidewalks. So again, this is more of an idea, but I'm putting it out there as a reminder, is that, we can do these kind of things, and maybe we should be doing them. Whether it be, finding ways to alleviate some of the school bus traffic, and, finding these walking school buses that other communities are starting to use. It might be something that, we could put our toe in the water and see if, again, we could, spend a little money and tell people that it's, an option, and maybe in a few years from now, we could feel good about it. So 50K is not a lot of money. I wish I knew how much per linear foot, put to sidewalk. It'd probably knock me off the podium here.
I think the current price is running between $32 and $33 a lineal foot for sidewalk. And that is kind of an average amount. I mean, you've got some areas, you've got your fixed cost, obviously, with the material. But if you get into some areas that you got to do some filling, you got to do some cutting, you got to do some drainage work and things. So that's an average. That's roughly an average cost that they use. And I haven't seen what the 2014 would be. It's probably a little early for that. But it's been running at that $32, $33 a linear foot.
So
and that's 5. So that the specs for that is 5 foot by 4 to 5 inch stone base and typically reinforced mesh.
Great. Thank you. Good answer. I'm smarter because of it. So that's it, Mr. Supervisor. Again, I've looked at the budget a number of times, and again, I appreciate the fiscal responsibility, but I think we have to give some visibility to a few more things, and that's the core of my comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Our next speaker, Amy?
Jeff Burns? Nope, we're done. I have no others.
Okay. Is there anyone in the...
Legislator Quattro.
Oh, Legislator Quattro. Legislator Dan Quattro represents the 15th LD Legislative District of Penfield. Not my legislator, but certainly a good friend.
Well, thank you very much, Legislator or Supervisor LaFountain. It used to be Legislator LaFountain when I started in this business. In fact, I sat right behind you, and I learned tons. My name is Dan Quattro, 48 Plank Road, Webster, New York, which is in the town of Penfield. So I am a Penfield resident. Now, I came here to congratulate you on this budget that I presume you're going to pass tonight. you know, you and I sat in the legislature. I entered the Monroe County Legislature in 2004, and you and I are not strangers to putting together difficult budgets. That continues to be a very difficult process for us at Monroe County at the legislative level because of the mandates that are placed upon us at the state level. I know that you're well aware. But I want to congratulate you on the process that you have here and on the results. This has always been an open process as long as I've been paying attention to it and participating in it to the degree that I can as a representative to the county legislature from the town of Penfield, along with Legislator Draw. But the results are speaking for themselves. You've kept your tax rate flat. And to keep that in perspective, I think that, and remind me if I'm wrong, as far as towns go in Monroe County, Penfield is fourth from the lowest, right? The fourth lowest. And the three lower ones would be Riga, Parrington, and Henrietta. And the things that those towns don't have compared to Penfield would be landfills and lots of malls and retail space. So in absence of a tremendous sales tax advantage or a landfill, I think that you guys are doing the best job in Monroe County with regards to your tax rate. You do that all along or at the same time as keeping an open process, preserving green space, having incredible quality of life. The transparency, I had a discussion with another legislator from the west side of Monroe County today and showed him PCTV, and he was impressed with the openness that we have here in Penfield. And I have to tell you that I'm proud to represent the 15th LD. I'm here to congratulate you again on your success with your budget process and for preserving the quality of life, not just for residents, but also for business people. I run a small business here in Penfield. And, you know, to comment on what Mr. Murphy says, I sometimes spend a little time on my bicycle, and there's a few rides that we do out of Penfield every week as a member of the Rochester Bike Club. I probably average 150 to 200 miles a week on my bike this summer. But I can tell you as a member of the Rochester Bike Club that we really appreciate riding through Penfield. Not just because the residents are so polite, but the roads are well maintained, and it's a beautiful community to ride through. So thank you very much for the hard work you guys do. Congratulations on a tremendous budget process, and keep up the good work, please.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board on any item? Okay. Move on to additions and deletions to the agenda. Seeing none, we have approval of the minutes. We have the September 18, 2013 minutes before us. Would entertain a motion of approval.
I move that the September 18th minutes be approved.
Second.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Discussion by the board. Seeing none, a roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Next item is petitions. Has the town clerk board or town attorney received any petitions? And I'll indicate that we have received one. This came in just recently from the residents of Abington Place. Basically, we, the undersigned, requested the town board approve to crosstown construction to open up a temporary haul road on the southern end of the development known as Abington Place. This temporary road off on 250 and extends to the southern side of the development. And the board, like all petitions, will take a look at that and discuss that at a work session. Okay, we'll move on to resolutions by function, please.
Resignation from the planning board.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas on October 4th, 2013, the town supervisor received a letter of resignation from planning board chairman Arsen Markarian. Be it resolved that the town board hereby accepts the resignation of Arsen from the planning board effective October 31st, 2013, and would like to extend its great appreciation to Arsen for his years of service for the town of Penfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion.
Many thanks to Arsen. I know, Supervisor, you have commended him. What did you already? Planning board function.
I did. The last planning board meeting, I did, on behalf of the board, present Arson with a certificate of appreciation for all of his work. 14 years on the planning board, started as a planning board member, moved to chairman. The other interesting fact about Arson was former mayor of a small village called Messina, New York, up in the North Country, and actually worked with having access to the Seaway, which I didn't realize until we put that proclamation together. He and his team at the time did a lot of work to get that opened up and available. So certainly Arson is a person that has got some great experience, going to be missed. I wish he and his wife Barbara all the best as they head very shortly to Arizona, never to see snow again unless they turn on their TV.
Definitely the municipal experience that Arson has, that government experience, very important in a position such as on the planning board. So it's having that background was very, very important to his success as chairman.
Great, thank you very much. Other comments? Seeing none, a roll call vote, please.
Cole? Aye. LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
5 ayes. Appointment of chair to the planning board.
Moved.
Second.
Be it resolved that Alan Hetzke of Penfield be appointed chair of the Town of Penfield Planning Board effective November 1st, 2013, for a term ending on December 31st, 2013, at an annual salary established by the town board.
Great. Discussion.
Just, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to point out Alan has been a longtime member of the planning board. Like Arson, he has a very mild demeanor and is very respectful towards the applicants that are before him, and sometimes in some of the meetings that can be a little bit vocal. I'm sure he will be as cooperative and as polite and respectful towards all the parties involved as Arson was, and I enthusiastically endorse his appointment and look forward to his service. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, this appointment is for the remainder of Mr. Markarian's term. So through the end of this year.
That is correct. And it should be noted that that he is currently the vice chair of the planning board. Okay. See no further comments. A roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
5 ayes. Appointment to the planning board.
Moved.
Second.
Be it resolved that Roseanne Denoncourt of Penfield be appointed to the planning board effective November 1st, 2013, for a term expiring December 31st, 2015, at an annual salary established by the town board.
Discussion? Just to note that Roseanne Denoncourt currently is a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals and has an interest of moving to the planning board. And so as dominoes go, we will be looking for interested parties for the zoning board position. Seeing no further comments, roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Moore?
I'm sorry, aye.
Quinn?
Just wanted to make sure you didn't get those 5 ayes. Just
My
say
head
more.
cold. Sorry.
Councilman Morse here.
5 ayes.
Are you sure?
The next resolution,
Thank you.
number 197, appointment to the planning board.
Moved.
Second.
Be it resolved that Robert Knauer of Penfield be appointed to the Penfield Planning Board effective November 1st, 2013, for a term expiring December 31st, 2013, at an annual salary established by the Penfield Town Board.
Discussion. Again, for the record, Mr. Knauer is a member of our Conservation Board, has been a member of the Conservation Board for a number of years, also active on our Energy Environmental Advisory Committee, and will make a great board member. Looking forward to Bob moving from the Conservation Board, and again, that will open up an opportunity on the Conservation Board.
I will second that, Mr. Supervisor. As liaison to the Conservation Board, I reluctantly fully supported Mr. Knauer and encouraged his transition from the Conservation Board to the Planning Board, with specifically regarding his alternative and sustainable energy experience with his solar energy company, his interest in conservation and environmental issues, environmental infrastructure, green infrastructure that certainly the Planning Board takes into account when they're looking at applications. So he will certainly bring a great deal of experience and passion in that regard to the Planning Board, which is much needed, I think.
Discussion, roll call vote, please.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Adoption of final budgets for fiscal year 2014 for the town of Penfield.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the Town Board of the Town of Penfield, having on the second day of October 2013, commencing at 7:30 p.m., duly held a public hearing on the preliminary budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2014. Whereas all requirements of Article 102 through 109 of the New York State Town Law for preparation and adoption of the general, highway, and library budgets have been met. Whereas requirements of Article 15 of the New York State Town Law for preparation and adoption of special district budgets have been met. Whereas, in addition to the above legal requirements, a presentation of the 2014 tentative budget was made at the Town Board Legislative Meeting on September 11th, 2013. Whereas, all persons desiring to be heard in the matter of the budgets of the Town of Penfield for fiscal year 2014 having been fully heard, now therefore be it resolved that the final budgets for the general, highway, and library funds in special districts be and the same are hereby adopted as the annual budgets for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2014, and that such annual budgets as so adopted be entered in detail in the minutes of the proceedings of this town board, and the annual budgets be made available for public inspection at the town clerk's office during normal business hours, as well as the finance office at Town Hall, located at 3100 Atlantic Avenue, and the public library at 1985 Baird Road.
Thank you. Discussion by the board.
I would just like to say that we are closing in on our 200th resolution for the year, and we usually finish each calendar year around 240, 250 resolutions, but none is more important than the budget resolution that we adopt each and every year. The vast majority of every resolution that we look at and dissect as a board sort of starts with this budget resolution. And very little can be done in this town from, planning services, road plowing, any other services that you can think of that don't start with this budget resolution. So I know I've said this in my previous 3 years, but this is the most important vote that I take every year. It's the most important vote I take every year as a member of the town board, and I support this resolution. Very well done, Mr. Supervisor.
I would concur with Councilman Quinn. One thing that when I talk to civic groups and residents, I talk about the anatomy of a resolution. I think Councilman Quinn put that together quite eloquently with respect to the budget touching upon various things we do in this town and understanding our role as a legislator. As we look forward to 2014, I think that, when I say the anatomy of a resolution, that different committees take part before a resolution is brought to this board. Not every resolution comes up for a vote. Those of you who attend work sessions know that there are many significant and some maybe not so significant items that we do not bring forward to vote on this dais. So there's certainly a lot of process goes behind each resolution, a lot of input from staff, from residents who sit on our various committees, Conservation Board, Historic Preservation Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Energy and Environment Advisory Committee. We look to all of them to help create what I talk to folks about as the anatomy of a resolution. I point to different parts of a resolution and say, this is where that came from. Here's how many times it was discussed. Some resolutions are discussed in 30 seconds in a work session. Other proposed resolutions are discussed over the course of 18 to 24 months of work sessions. Some discussions go 18 months and don't even get to a resolution. So not every matter that this legislative body discusses goes to a vote of resolution. And those that I know pay attention know that. And some of you who are watching have heard me talk about that when I've been giving a little bit of a civics lesson here and there throughout the community. So with respect to this budget vote, again, it's a one-page resolution, but there's a lot at stake within this resolution. And well done, Mr. Supervisor, and our department heads who have come together throughout the year, Mr. Beeden as well. We hear your printer going over and over again as you're fine-tuning the budget, and I think it's a budget that we can be proud of, and as I've talked to residents about it, many are quite impressed by what we have in store for 2014. We're excited about it.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm very happy to vote for this budget, that there's a lot of hard work that goes on between the supervisor and our controller, Bob Beeden. They start in spring and go all through the summer, and now we adopt it in the fall. So, I mean, it's most of the year is spent with the budget. It is the most important thing we vote on, as Rob said. And I just want to, thank you all for all the work you put into it. I'm happy to be a part of this group that gets to manage the town in such a way that the tax rate has remained as it is, and as Dr. Quattro mentioned, as we remain the fourth lowest of the Monroe County towns. So thank you. And thank you, Bob.
Discussion?
Yeah, just real quickly, Mr. Supervisor. We heard a couple speakers here today, Mr. Murphy and Legislator Quattro, commend you on your commitment to fiscal responsibility, and I'd like to join them with that. I know you put a lot of time and effort into this budget, and as soon as you showed us your official budget as really the board of directors for the town of Penfield, you were very open to our questions, and the department heads were very accessible to us, so I thank you for that. Just a real quick question for Mr. Beeden, if I can. It was spoken about a little bit earlier with one of our sewer public hearing meetings about credit rating. And I think that when we talk about commitment to fiscal responsibility, credit rating comes into that conversation. So my question, Mr. Beeden, is again, what is the value, or what is the importance of a credit rating, and what is the town of Penfield's credit rating?
Thank you, Councilman Moore. A credit rating is very important for the town because it allows us to be able to get low finance interest rates on our bonding. And if we're going to be borrowing $2,440,000 for sewer projects for 2014 and 15, that's very critical because that will save us about 0.5% by us having the AA2 credit rating.
Thank you very much. And
the only other thing, Bob doesn't always take as much credit, so I'll probably embarrass him a little bit here, but. As he puts this together, works with, in this case, Bernie Donegan, who is our financial folks, we always project a worst-case scenario. So I think it was mentioned either by Mr. Freeler or by Mr. DeFrancesco about the 4%. But when the rubber meets the road, and there is no 100% guarantee, but when the rubber meets the road, that percentage is going to be probably lower than that 4%. And in addition to Bob's comment about being important as we look to borrow money, we're viewed as a very good risk who consistently has on-time balanced budgets. And that's what helps get, that's a piece that helps get our rating. The other piece that helps get a rating is that as we do borrow the money, that we pay that back on time, or in some cases ahead of time. And then we're constantly looking to refinance is another aspect of some of our older bonds that we might have out there. And all of that adds up to that. And Bob, excuse me, Bob, on a daily basis, is keeping his finger on the pulse, working with Bernie Donegan, looking at the overall finances, how the market is going. All of those things are so critical as to when we pull that trigger. And Bob, certainly over the years, your input and your vision, in addition to what we've seen with Donegan, has been very, very positive, very favorable. And so I want to thank you for that. I know you're not a person that likes to stand up and take too many bows, but certainly, and I've accused Bob that he's one of those few guys that has short arms and very deep pockets. So thank you for really watching after our finances.
Thank you.
Bob, not only watching, I know there have been times when we've really pressed you and said it with respect to our various departments that we may be looking at, you know, can we do better? And you will very confidently say, we can do better. And we love hearing those 4 words because you come back to us and we can do better, and we do.
Thank you, Paula. And the department heads have adjusted to the occasion, and you have made that happen, and that's why we have the tax rates that we have, and that's why you're doing a good job. Thank you.
I think I cut you off, Mr. Moore.
No, that's fine. I appreciate your comments. They're well said. I guess my only last comment regarding the credit rating is that, you know, it's my opinion that a good credit rating is good for taxpayers in Penfield. So I thank you for all your help that you do, and thank the supervisor for his commitment to fiscal responsibility. I will be supporting this budget as presented to the town board for a lot of different reasons, but going back to the public hearing that we held 2 weeks ago, I did ask quite a few questions to our finance director, questions involving revenue projections, questions involving expenses, questions involving specific projects that the town's going to be working on in 2014, and I'm satisfied with those answers. After the public meeting, I took some time and spoke with many of the different department heads, and was satisfied with our conversation, what they saw as their vision for their particular department. You look at Parks Department, our parks will be properly maintained, and that's good for residents. A lot of our youth programs participate on all of our parks, whether it's Rothfuss Park, Greenwood Park, Harris Whalen Park. A lot of youth programs going on there on a daily basis, depending on the season. Roads will be plowed this winter, and they'll be repaired. Recreation programs have sufficient funding, and during my conversation with Chris Bilo, our recreation director, I was astonished that over the course of a year, the town offers as many as 900 recreation programs. It's recreation programs for youth, for seniors, and for adults. That's something I think we can all be proud of. The town website and PCTV does an excellent job, and their commitment and our commitment to open government is unwavering. And according to Dave Renner, their operation is up and going and full speed ahead, and we appreciate all the efforts that Dave's team does downstairs for these meetings and for the other meetings and other committee meetings that go on in this town every single month. Bunny Brinkman does an excellent job at the library. I use the library a lot with my 6-year-old, my 4-year-old, and I cannot speak highly enough about the great job that they do there. And the library is going to be in great shape moving into next year. I'd also like to thank Amy Steckloff, our town clerk. She does an excellent job, and her commitment to customer service is unwavering. Mr. Supervisor, you've talked a little bit about partnerships over the last 4 or 5 years since I've been on this board. And it's great to see that the partnerships with the sheriff's office and the school district and our youth recreation programs, Penfield Little League and youth football and youth soccer are all going to continue for the betterment and the enrichment of the people and residents here in Penfield. The 2014 budget is a good budget. It holds the tax rate flat with no tax rate increase. The 2014 budget today is less than the adopted budget of 2013. So I thank you for your commitment there. Legislator Quattro did mention a little bit earlier this evening or during the public participation about tax rates in different towns. And Mr. Beeden and I spend every year going over this, and he knows it's coming every single budget year. But we look at the different tax rates that are being offered by the different towns moving into 2014. And of the 19 towns, yes, it looks like Penfield is fourth. But you have to remember that the top three, that being Riga, Perrington, and Henrietta, Riga has the mill seat landfill, and they have no tax rate because of that landfill. Henrietta has all the commercial and industrial development that I believe that we don't want here in Penfield, but that's fine in Henrietta. And Perrington has the High Acres landfill, which provides a lot of money to their budget that allows them to have a lower tax rate. At $2.64 in our tax rate, it's much lower than some of the other towns. And some of the other towns are as high as $6.51. Some towns are at $6.33. Other towns are at $6.21. So I commend you, Mr. Supervisor, and all the efforts that you've done. Our speakers have been very positive, and I look forward to 2014. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, I would ask for a roll call vote on the 2014 budget.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes. Authorization for supervisor to sign recreation contracts.
So moved.
Second.
This resolution authorizes the town supervisor to sign 5 recreation contracts, and they're dealing with, youth flag football and wrestling camp and recreation wellness program.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, a roll call vote.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Metzler. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, this brings us to old business. Any old business to come before the board? We have one more opportunity for public participation coming up in a minute, 340-8771 or at penfield.org. Any new business to come before the board? Seeing none. Our second public participation, anyone would like to address the board on any matter? Seeing none, I would like to just do a public service announcement here. I have the benefit of having some information fed for me from downstairs, and so this, as I read this, gets me a little frustrated on a couple of fronts. Number one, the fact that we got taken from Channel 12 and Channel 15 now several months ago and moved up into 98 and change. Dave Renner gets a little upset with me when I say change, but it's the 98.345. But we continue to have problems with that, and as much as we try to get information out, Time Warner Cable tends to have us take a back seat. And so a portion of tonight's meeting, the latter portion of tonight's meeting, we've got audio, but we don't have video. And so every time this happens, I make that phone call to be that pain in the neck, because I don't think we should be second-class citizens. I think we should, in fact, be able to get our product, put it on the field each and every time that we want to do it, and have reliability. They seem to be doing that for the rest of the channels. So I would ask that certainly you have an opportunity to contact Time Warner Cable and complain a little bit. If nothing else, I mean, they're not going to take us back to 12 and 15, but if they're going to put us up at 98.345, it should be at least very viewable. So their customer service is 756-5000 or 1-800-756-7956. And certainly if you'd like to route anything into our PCTV, you can do that via renner@penfield.org. And Dave is in contact with, I don't want to over-exaggerate this, but probably almost every day because one thing or another isn't working. And so I think we deserve to get the attention that we need. Our residents want to see these meetings, and so I'm going to ask Dave that we put this up on his website so that those numbers are available. And I would encourage all of our residents, you may not be seeing us at this point, but hearing us, to call into Time Warner and demand that that service be consistent and be restored, and then be maintained. So I'm off my soapbox. I apologize for that. There are no other business to come before this evening, before this board this evening. This meeting is officially adjourned. I want to thank PCTV, all of our speakers tonight, and everyone that participated. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.